And we're live. Thank you so much for joining me on this particular topic. I have been working on tracing my American Indian ancestry, and I'd like to give you an update on what I have found. I know that a number of us have been going through the archives, and some of us have also been going through the Census Bureau, and some of us might even be going through looking at the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And just after reading the Bureau of Indian Affairs, they indicated that that's the wrong place to start. But they did give us a guide to tracing our Indian ancestry. And I want to thank them for doing that. And certainly, every African American who is living should be about the business of tracing their ancestry. What really blew my mind is when I discovered that if you had at least 1/8 blood in you, you could be classified as the Anglo-Saxon. And that's when Indians were classified as white, with 1/8 of blood white in them. We're no longer classified as Anglo. What I'm trying to discover is because my family was a mixed family, and I'm trying to find out if they classified my mother upon dying as a mulatto or as a colored folk or as a white folk. And I found many persons with my mother's name that I'm hoping and praying that is not her who were classified as white. So I'm trying to rule that out right now. And every African American should be now plowing through the records with an attempt through, whether it be through birth records, death records, or through military, to see if was one of the 5 organized tribes, and that's Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cree, Seminole, and Cherokee. Now, I have a few others that I list. You understand what is going on, because there's a number of things that are going on that you definitely want to know about. Excuse me. There are other tribes that have been recognized in the Midwest that are receiving assistance and services. Excuse me. There are other tribes that are recognized in the Midwest. And I'm also going to go over with a process that you can use for researching American ancestry. Now, a lot of DNA, and I don't proclaim to be an expert, but I am a researcher. And I have had many hours in working with Westlaw, legal, but differently. I'm looking at the Census Bureau. I'm looking at the Bureau there. I'm looking at the National Archives. And look at the National Archives. They will tell you that you need to have your Dow's roll number. And that is a must. And they want you to have your mother's death certificate if she's no longer alive, and your birth certificate, the original birth certificate, and a copy of your Social Security card. These things you're going to send in to the National Archive so they can look up your Dow's roll number to declare what percentage of native blood that your ancestors had at that time, because they signed up for this roll. And there were two different types of rolls that you can sign up for. The Dows, and you had the Freedmen's roll. Now, where did the Freedmen's roll come from? They had to create the Freedmen roll because there was a large sum of colored slaves, descendants of slaves who actually were freed slaves who were living with the Chickasaws, the Choctaw, the Seminoles, the Cherokee, and the Cree. They were living with them, cohabitating with them, and some of them were owned by these 5 original tribes. And by them being owned by these original tribes, they did not want to give any of those Black prior enslaved people land. They refused to give them land. And eventually, those 5 original tribes put them out and did not want them to take part in the land or the property or any of the benefits. So the federal government felt it was his duty to go and create the Freedmen's Bureau. And for those Indians who were not the Coppertone Indians, born through bloodline, they decided that they would create a treaty to give land to our African descendants or free slaves. They decided to give them some land. So if the Indians wanted to bring them into their nations and their tribe, they could, but they were not 5 original tribes by bloodline. They were freedmen Indians, not by bloodline. Do you understand that? This bloodline thing goes real deep, real deep. So here's how it's going to play out. Right now, the federal government is investigating some heads of tribal officials who actually are heads of these 5 tribal American Indians who are now being questioned as whether or not they are truly bloodline Native Americans, and also investigating the way that they're handling the monies for the tribe. Now, if it's found out that they had no bloodline whatsoever and they become freedmen like a lot of us as Blacks did, then they could be demoted from their jobs and no longer heads of those tribes. And it's going to play itself out in a court of law. If Canadians are interested in these cases, they're doctoring other countries as well, because at one time, the Caucasian who had tons of money had the ability to pay $5 to get on the Dow's roll without even testing their blood or looking at their lineage. They paid for a slot on the Dow's roll and they got it. And they got the benefits to go along with it. Now, during that time, it was well known that they were able to live on these reservations. They were able to produce products such as candy or work in a casino and get a profit and a share of those proceeds. Now, what the BIA want us to know is that there's a lot of myths out there about the monies that these so-called tribes are receiving. We know there is some, but let's go and clarify exactly where these funds are coming from and if they are truly myths. But just as I told you, remember in your mind now, the 5 recognizable tribes were the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, the Seminoles, the Cree, and the Cherokee, the 5 recognized regional tribes. Now, as I looked up, the tribes served by the Midwest region, and I'm only talking about the Midwest region, the Great Lakes agencies. Let me give you some of those tribes where it was the Great Lakes Agency, Bad River Band of Lake Superior Tribe of. And these are some of the tribes: Chippewa Indians, Forest County, Potawatomi Community, Lake Superior, Chippewa Indians of Wisconsin, Oneida Tribe of Indian of Wisconsin, Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa Indians of Wisconsin, Sokagon Chippewa Indians of Wisconsin, Sokagon Chippewa Community, St. Croix Chippewa Indians of Wisconsin, Stockbridge Musi Community. Now, those are the Midwest regions. Then there's the Midwest regional offices, and they are Sac and Fax Tribe of Iowa, Lower Sioux Indian Community, Tribe of Iowa, Lower Sioux Indian Community, Prairie Island Indian Community, Shakopee Wekan Sioux Community, Upper Sioux Community, Red Lake Band of Chippewa Indians, Menominee Indian Tribes of Wisconsin. Now, then there are agencies, and here they are: the Michigan Agency and the Michigan, and they are the Bay Mill Indians Community, Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians, Hannahville Indians Community, Huron Potawatomi Inc., Cowickanaw Bay Indian Community, Lac Vin Desert Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa Indian, Little Red Band of Ottawa Indian, Little Traverse Bay Band of Ottawa Indians, Mel Hinasha, the Wish Band, Potawatomi Indian of Michigan, Pokaon Band of Potawatomi Indians, Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe, Sioux Marie Tribe of Chippewa of Michigan, and then there is the Minnesota agencies, which is the Bioforts Reservation Business Community, Fond du Lac Reservation Business Community, Grand Portage Reservation Business, Leaky Lake Reservation Business Community, Millie Lac Band Assembly, Minnesota Tribe of the White Earth Reservation. Now, that's just to set the precedence for you. I read those because when you hear them, it makes a lot of sense. Here's where we and we looked at. But in the we're at whether or not we were citizens, we find out that at least some reliable source indicated to me or to the world that there was some lies in that case. And in the case where Scott was trying to prove his citizenship and was not able to prove it, first of all, Scott had to prove his sanity. They deemed him classified as a white man, and they also deemed him insane, from what I gathered. And if he was insane, you cannot try and convict someone that is deemed mentally ill or insane, because they cannot stand trial and they cannot go to court. So why was he deemed insane? And at the same time, his case was heard. There's something wrong with that scenario. Now, for a case that old, you would think that those lies would have been summed up by 150 years by now, but they haven't. And that's not what we're here to debate about. We're here to debate about the fact that they have turned the Constitution upside down. They have lied about tribal connection, and they have told us that we're only connected to a native ancestorship by virtue of being slaves of our own so-called brothers and sisters, the Native Americans. Yes, they enslaved us. And yes, they kept us from getting our birthright. As a matter of fact, they in turn became us and we became them, and they took the birthright that we were supposed to have. We should not be asking for reparation right now. There are some laws and legalities that need to be addressed that has nothing to do with reparation. And if those things are addressed, we may not even have to ask anyone for reparation, because there's technically some legal things that were not documented properly on behalf of the so-called colored people. And if you really want to know, we're not even the colored people or the black people. That too has to be deciphered. Now, what I came here to talk to you about is about my research. And I'm going to keep you posted from time to time about my research and what I've discovered. And I ran up on the guide to Tracing Your American Indian Ancestry. And it says here, establishing your American Indian ancestry. Some people want to become enrolled in members of a federally recognized tribe, and I quote, others want to verify a family tradition of both facts or fiction passed from the generation to generation that they descended from American Indians, either in their distant or near past, while others might want to descend from any American Indians, just to learn more about people they descended from and where they live. Now, and it goes on to say, when people believe they may be an American Indian ancestry, they immediately write or telephone the nearest Bureau of Indian Affairs, the BIA, don't forget that, office for information. That is not the best place to start. I repeat, place to start. Now, it goes on to say, this is not the best place to start. Many people think the BMI receives genealogy information from a mass natural Indian registry or comprehensive computer database. This is not true, they said. Most BIA office, particularly the central headquarters in Washington, D.C., they said, and the area field office do not, individual in the BIA and does not maintain a natural registry. The BIA does not conduct genealogy research for the public. So please do not go asking them to conduct a genealogy research for you. And it goes on to say, and I quote, benefits and services provided to American Indians and Alaska natives. Now, let's find out what are the benefits and services. Let's talk about the myths, because there are many myths, and here are some of them, and I quote, the myth of the monthly check. There has long been a myth that Indians receive a monthly check from the U.S. and government because of their status as an Indian. There is no basis for this belief other than misinformation, it said. And it goes on to say, misconception of the status of American Indians. Some tribal members and lineal descendants receive payments from the federal government resulting from claims and elements. And it goes on to say, and I quote, but there are very few judgments found per capita payment that remain today. And it says, beginning to quote, some tribes distribute payments to enrollment members when venues from the sale of tribal assets such as a timer, hydroelectric powers, or oil and gas permits. Many tribes cannot make their capital payment because they do not have natural resources or other revenues from which they make a fund distribution. And I quote, it said, some tribes have successfully businesses that do defense, contracting operation, casinos, and information and technology. Companies sell spring water and make candy if profits are warranted and members approve it. Funds from those operations can be paid out as a monthly, yearly, or occasional stipend to tribal budgets. So there you have it. They're not giving money like they proclaim it's a myth. And it goes on to say, and I quote, there's a clear distinction between judgment funds and tribal funds. Judgment funds are appropriated by Congress after a claim that is filed by tribes or Indian descendants group against the United States is settled. Tribal funds are are derived from tribal assets referred to paragraph above, as an individual does not have to be an enrolled member of a tribe to receive a final bond payment. So you don't have to be a member of a tribe to receive a final judgment payment. An individual must be an enrolled member of a to be eligible to receive payments derived from tribal assets. They must only be enrolled to receive tribal fund. Services for American Indians, and it says, and I quote, Indian Affairs, although it's government related with federally recognized tribes, carry out the federal government unique and continuing relationship with responsibility to tribes and Indian people. Indian Affairs programs support and assist federally recognized tribes in the development of tribal government, strong economic quality programs. Now, let me stop for a minute. They've gone on to create this whole list of how you go about the disciple enrollment in a federally recognized tribe. What is the purpose of the tribal enrollment? Let's see. It says the tribal enrollment requirement preserves the unique character and tradition of each tribe. The tribe establishes membership criteria based on shared customs, traditions, languages, and tribal blood. Next, what are tribal membership requirements? And here they are. Tribal membership criteria are set forth in the tribal constitution, and they have a constitution, articles of incorporation or ordinance, The criterion varies from tribe to tribe. So uniform membership requirement do not exist. So they're not unified. Two common requirements for membership are lineal descendancy from someone named on the tribal base troll of relationships to a tribal member who descends from someone named on the base roll. A base roll is the original list of members as designed in a tribal constitution or other documents specifying enrollment criteria. Other conditions such as tribal blood quantum. Repeat that again. Tribal blood quantum, tribal residency, or contact with the tribes are common. How do I apply for enrollment in a tribe? And here is what they describe, and I quote, after you have completed your genealogy research, documented your ancestry, and determined the tribe with which your ancestors was affiliated, you are ready to contact the tribe directly to obtain the criteria for membership. Rarely is the BIA involved in enrollment and membership. Each tribe determines whether or not an individual is eligible for membership. Each tribe maintains its own enrollment records and records about past members. To obtain information about your eligibility for membership, you must contact the tribe. So you have to know which tribe you are in, and then you contact them directly. How do I locate the tribe I may have Indian ancestry from? The tribe leaders, that is published by the Bureau of Indians Affairs. Now, this is the Bureau of Indians Affairs list. 100 list of all the 562 to recognize American Indians, tribes, and Alaskan natives. It also lists all of the regions, agencies, and offices within the BIA. Obtain one online at www.doi.gov/lead leaders.pid. 202-208 3710. Doing the continued search. Do you need computer? Yes. It cannot be more than a computer is a valuable tool in your effort to do the research. The organization individuals that have digitizes their records, pictures, files, place them in the World Wide Web. The ability to gather record addresses, phone numbers, and other vital information that you will use make it a necessary tool to use. The internet can be accessed at your local public library or local community college check areas. Now, let me stop for a minute here. You want to know how do you begin ancestry or genealogy research with yourself. And I quote, do not begin research in Indian records, for this can most often be the wrong approach. Instead, begin research in current rather than history. If an individual is not currently a member of a recognized tribe and or group, research should begin in non-Indian records or other public records such as those maintained by the state and local government. Church, you want to check your churches and school and local governments first. Individuals should find the information they can about their parents, grandparents, and more. Distinct ancestors, write such information down. The most important information is vital. Statistics, including ancestral names, dates of birth, marriages, or divorces, and deaths, the places where ancestors were born, lived, married, and died. During such research, the goal, especially for tribal membership purpose, is to establish and document the relationship ancestors and to identify the Indian tribes with which their ancestors may have been affiliated. Where do you look for information? First, you look at on the local and state level, in Paris and other repositories. On the federal level, this is where you concerning the public, records concerning American Indians, a Bureau of Indian Affairs office. What do I do if options that you will follow for adoption is different? And if you do not want to do the work yourself, you can always pay someone to do it as well by contacting the Board of Certification of Genealogy. I'm sure there's someone that will take your money for that. Cherokee Indian Ancestry. Brief overview of Cherokee Indians ancestry. And we're not going to get into each one of these because of time constraint. But you have to understand that within the Cherokees, you have your Oklahoma band of Cherokees and Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. And then you have your United Cherokee, you have your United Cherokee Band of Indians. We're going to stop for a minute and say that, boy, they've got this thing entangled for us being slaves and actually being the first indigenous people here and then put into slavery. We sort of our indigenous identity to the land. And somebody came from another part of the continent who were not even indigenous natives, and they claimed our ancestryship and they claimed our indigenous spots, and they got all the benefits, and we got put back into slavery and were classified as colored. Just like in Virginia, when they dumped everybody in the category and said even the Native Americans and African Americans alike, Hispanics, all of them, Dutch, that was not indigenous from this land were being called colored people. Now this is what Virginia did until a law was passed to change that. because they were robbing people of their own identity. We've got to start groups of people that will come together and start doing the research and doing the work. We don't have to ask for reparation anymore. There's enough hidden in the fact that the indigenous people are in, and the fact that they have violated a lot of our rights, and our rights have been violated, and we can challenge them on the rights itself and never have to even mention reparation. For to let the truth be told, somebody robbed us of our identity, because you cannot have any people that are not pure-blooded natives, who are not pure-blooded indigenous people, claiming that they're indigenous when they're aliens, because they are not blooded. They actually are mongoloid. Anytime you are a mongoloid, you are and you are a native. So mongoloids, indigenous, and those Indians out there that are perpetrating, they're mongoloid Indians. There's a certain percent of white blood they're carrying, and they're not indigenous blacks who have the black blood in them. The mongoloid gives them the straight hair and the fair skin. They cannot be the indigenous people. They are perpetrating a fraud, and they're getting our benefits. And how long have other people been getting our land and our benefits? And we don't have anything in that Constitution that speaks to our legitimacy. It actually, the Dred Scott case proves it. We were never considered citizens, and they even lied in the case with Dred Scott and claimed that in the documentation that he had a percentage of Anglo-Saxon blood, and he was classified as a white. And he also was classified as being insane. You cannot try an insane person, but yet they have used that case to substantiate a prima facie case. And to this day, we are being found wanting, asking for reparation. We no longer have to ask for reparation. We only need to address these issues in a court of law and see that we have been bamboozled and we have been robbed and we have been, in a court of law, misrepresented. And someone that is a mongoloid is perpetrating a black indigenous Indian, a mongoloid who comes from a different climate and a different location, indigenous to Turtle Island. This is what no one's not seeing this. Anytime you have the long stringy hair that has less than a 6 flink in it, and when you are fair-skinned, you are mongoloid. You are to be a black Nubian, indigenous of the ground and the earth. But if you are not, you have no right receiving our benefit. How many times are they going to hand over our to the peasants? And not only those people who are coming over as refugees, but now we have got people coming over who are mongoloids and clearly know they're mongoloids. They couldn't have been indigenous to this land by virtue of the fact that they're fair-skinned people, have never been a part of the land. Why are they claiming our land? Why are they walking around here getting our benefits, stomping and doing our dance? Ones that can make it rain. We're the rainmakers. They're interpreting themselves to be the rainmakers, and they're a fraud, and it must be pointed out. And with the help of many of you, we can stand and go in to defeat this whole concept about us only being natives of this country by virtue of the fact that we were owned as slaves by our own so-called brothers who are not indigenous, but are Mongoloids. Mongoloids are us. And now they want to claim the land for themselves, and they put us out on the side of the road and refused to give us any of the land, and the government had to step in and create the Freedmen Treaties in order to give us some land. We've got to right this wrong. We've got to straighten this wrong out. We will not be hollering anymore, yelling anymore about reparation. You no longer have to decide how you have to divide this thing. We'll have to go to court to decipher all the wrongs that have been done. And to be able to decipher those wrongs, you will have to grant some monetary gains, because a right has to be overturned. This wrong has to be overturned in addressing these issues that have been overlooked by the court of law. And Dred Scott's case can be an example of that. No, he didn't have citizenship, and no, they didn't have venue to hear his case. But they never should have heard his case in the first place if they deemed him incompetent, and mentally incompetent at that, and insane. Go look at the records. I understand they're out there for us to read. That case should still be overturned to this day. If he was incompetent and mentally incompetent, you cannot hold a man on trial because of him being incompetent. So here we have tons of lies that have been perpetrated against the people who have been drugged across the Stratton's plain, who have been drugged across the Middle Passage, and who have been lied about from coming over on the good ship Jesus, and who have been lied and told us that our homeland is Africa, when it's here on Turtle Island in the Midwest in the North America. So we must point these things out. And thank you so much, Phoenix Moon, who have researched and done her due diligence in pointing out these inadequacies. We are happy to see that we've got scholars out there working on top of these things. We must help one another to do our genealogy and our research so that we have the facts. Now, those were the facts coming to you right from my research. I gave you and read to you and quoted to you right from the research of how to trace your and how to trace it. Do not start with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. That's not where you start. You start in your library, in your churches, okay, and in your states, and start with yourself and finding the Census Bureau of your mothers and fathers and great-great-grandparents' census records, of their marriage records, birth certificate, death certificate. I'm starting in all those places. By profession, I am a researcher. I have the ability to know which archives to pull, but you will need to go to the National Archives to find out where do you send your Dow's roll number. Where do you send that so that you can get on these lists? But they've told you, once you discover which tribe you're from, then you write that tribe and request an application like I did. If you're Seminole, you believe you're Seminole, request an application from the Oklahoma and from the Jacksonville, Florida membership. Cherokee also has 2 different members or 3 different membership. You have to call them, and depending on the locality of where your family was from, whether it be from Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, or whether it be from Oklahoma, then you begin to contact them. Contact your churches. And if you know your family went to certain churches, ask them if you could research their records. They keep records in their basements sometimes, allow you to access. And then after you look at the churches, Then go to your local libraries and ask them if they have records of some of your family members' marriage records or licensing records. If they, maybe they will have held on to these records, but you must start your search somewhere. But it's not in the BMI. And just as I told you, there was a lot of myths about all this money floating around that these indigenous people were being handed over. They were not being handed over anything unless they had oil on their land, and they excavated it, then they divided the money on a monthly basis. And if they had businesses such as they sold candy or water or had a casino, then they split it, that money's up. But you can also, if your name is not on any of those 5 original native tribe, then you can ask to be a member of one of the tribe, and you can approach them with the request to have membership in one of the local tribe. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get a ton of money, so please get that out of your mind. You might get a card membership that you can carry around and say you're a member of a tribe, and you might get invited to the powwows. But it's very vital that you know your heritage. And what African Americans are missing is we don't know our heritage. We've been displaced by intentions, and we've been bamboozled about who we are. And we were told that we're not the Native Americans. See, you don't have the fair skin and long hair, and you don't look like any of those papoose over there, or those Indian princes. You might not want to be an Indian princess once you find out what they did. But you must have to understand that Mongoloids mix differently. Mongoloids have white blood, and that's why you see the fair skin and the long, flinky hair that does not have a ninth ether. Ninth ether means you're growing close to the wilderness, close to the forest. We are indigenous because by virtue of our skin and our hair. We were made for this climate. We didn't come over on ships from Africa. We were here already because this was the indigenous land that we were found on. And we must prove that in a court of law. Yes, we're going to have to go to court, and we're going to have to pull out our records and prove that we're indigenous to this area and that our heritage has been stolen from us. And we've got to fight to get it back. Now, we're awake now. Yes, we're awake. I want the world to know we're awake. And I'm damn mad about it because somebody had my mother classified as a mulatto. And I know she was a Seminole Indian. And I know she carried the black blood in her. Maybe she did have specks of white blood, but she's not a white woman, and she should not have had to been buried as a white woman. And we're going to get to the bottom of that. And that's one of my reasons for researching, to prove that she died as one of the indigenous people of this world and not as a white woman. Now, so many people would have loved to have been classified as a white person, and they tell me that the natives that they're describing on the list are white people. Now, I find that hard to believe, but if it is so, then they will reverse the fact that we're white folks and they're black. But we know that in a court of law, the court does not have to recognize a black man in a court of law. So we no longer want to use that term. We must get our terminology correct. We must get our terminology correct, because if we don't, we'll continue to go in these courtrooms and not be recognized to be given a right to law. But getting back to the fact that we were slaves and that some 5 original tribes owned us, and they didn't even want to give us land. They literally turned their backs on us. And sometimes I wonder, was there such a thing as Trail of Tears? And did the Cherokees suffer in the way they said they suffered? It sounds like they were working with the white man against us. And it sounds like they weren't being brothers and sisters to us at all. And if that was the case, that is why our land was delayed, because they refused to give us any of their allotment of the land. Now that is documented. And those 5 original tribes were working against us and working with our arch enemy, our slave masters. And they also became our slave masters. So we've got to get our right standing. We got to put them in their proper place. They are not the indigenous people, and I repeat, Mongoloids. They came after we did, and not come from the indigenous Turtle Island. So they need to stop the lies. And we need to put a stop to the lies and substantiate the lies. And more of us should speak about this topic. I'm going to continue to be on top of the research. I'm going to continue to be on top of researching just who are we and why did someone seek to steal our identity? Because there were benefits had and they wanted them, and we must get them back. So I want to thank you so much for listening to my brief report that I had to give you. But I want to also say something else, that some of us are not looking at what is really going on. And so many lies have been told, and we're falling for these lies, and we are losing ground. Well, we must regain this ground by defining who we are. And we must begin to understand that it's better late than never for us to talk about who we really are and how someone stole our heritage. It's better late than never, so that we can stand strong, 100 strong, and we can realize that this land is ours. Now, many of us have bought property and don't realize that the land is not yours, but many of us must claim our land, and we must confront the status quos, and we must let them know that we are bringing a charge against those that are falsely robbed us of our identity and that are claiming it as their own. I don't care how many dances they do and how many powwows they have and how many ways they're able to spot their grandfathers in high places and smokers they have. They can't turn black and become jaded. They cannot become supernaturally black and be a part of when God said, let us make man in our own image. We were made in the image and likeness of our Father. He created us and put us here. And this Thanksgiving, we'll be giving thanks to us waking up, coming into consciousness with who we are, and stopping this foolishness about asking for reparation, begging for something that's already ours. We no longer need to ask you for reparation. We know the land is ours. We know our identity is plain and clear. We don't have to ask you for that. We only need to stand in the gap and the place where we need to stand and to claim it. And those so-called various different tribes of the Cherokee, the Choctaws, the Seminoles, and the Cherokee will have to come clean and explain that their forefathers were black. And if they were native, they were descendants. They were not the original people. They were Mongoloids who came from another part of the continent and who came after we explored and conquered this land and us. So they cannot be originals if they came behind us. Never forget that. Never forget. Now, let's go forth and claim our native heritage as indigenous people of Turtle Island. Thank you.